Hello, everyone. Happy Wednesday. This is a new show that we're putting together for our English followers, English-speaking followers. You've probably seen on social media and in our newsletters that we do a lot of Spanish shows. The show Sin Fronteras, we do twice a week for 30 minutes on Mondays at 12:30 and Thursdays at 1:30. They're both streamed on the radio. They're streamed here on social media on all the channels. And then we package them and send them out in a newsletter with an English summary. And we really want to be able to give more in-depth content to our clients who speak English and our followers who prefer English about, all the things we're talking about, immigration updates, etc. So that is what this show is. We're going to be doing this bi-weekly, and it's going to be a roundup of FAQs that we're getting in our firm from our clients, from the potential clients who are calling us, and of course, any immigration updates that are happening in the world we'll be talking to you about on this show here. So please give us your reactions, give us your comments, your questions. We'd love to interact with you. Please share this video with your friends if you hear something useful. And thank you, as always, for your friendship. And this is all meant to be totally educational and informative for people who want to keep up with immigration. That's why we're here. That's why you're here. That's what we'll be doing for you. And so today we are here with Yun Wen, who works at the firm. Yun Wen and I met several years ago at, I think it was a KUT public forum, and Yun Wen spoke publicly about her DACA experience, and I was really blown away by this. She's a very impressive woman. And so it just so happened later down the road, we have the opportunity to work together at the firm. I feel so lucky that we get to work together, and Yun Wen does a lot of stuff behind the scenes to help keep you guys informed. And so you get to see her lovely face today and on future shows where we'll be doing the roundup. So enough of that build up, Yun Wen. Let's get to our topic for today.
Yeah, thank you so much. So today we have a really interesting topic, and it's something that a lot of our immigrant community have questions about. And so tax season is upon us. The last day or tax day is on April 18th. But we're here to discuss, why do immigrants need to file taxes? And something that's very popular among the immigrant community is something that's called the Individual Taxpayer Identification Number, ITIN for short. And so this is a tax processing number that was issued by the IRS, and it's going on 26 years now. And so this ITIN has allowed immigrants, undocumented immigrants, people without a legal immigration status, to pay billions of dollars in taxes every year. But one of the questions that we always get is, what is the purpose of paying taxes? Where does that money go?
Great question. So obviously, people who are living in the United States, whether they are immigrants or U.S. citizens, have a civic duty to be paying into the tax system. And that is, the money that goes to fund all aspects of the government, from infrastructure to education, et cetera. And we pay taxes involuntarily through sales tax in Texas. Every time we purchase something, we pay sales tax. We all pay property taxes, whether we own our property or rent our property. If you're a renter, your property tax is built into the cost of your monthly rent. And we are all paying into the system in multiple ways. And federal taxes is one of those. And so every year on April 15th, or unless you get an extension, you file your federal tax return and pay taxes if you owe them, or you get a refund if you've overpaid taxes. So in general, if you work for an employer, a company as an employee, then they will be withdrawing or withholding your federal taxes and paying them for you. And so at the end of the year, you get a document that you use to file your tax return, and it shows what your income was and what your taxes were. And you look at what credits and deductions you get, maybe the child tax credit, things like that. And at the end of the return, you either owe an amount or you get a refund. usually it's very, very rare that nothing happens, that you don't owe anything and they don't owe you anything. And so it really depends on whether you've paid into the system or not, whether you've been an independent contractor or not. But that is it's our duty to file a tax return every year on April 15th. So tax time is now, and people are preparing to file, if they haven't already, their taxes for last year of 2021. And by January, if you worked last year, if you worked as an employee, you'll get your W-2, which you use to file your taxes. And if you work as an independent contractor, you get your 1099, which you use to file your taxes. And if you've been paid as an independent contractor, you don't have taxes withdrawn. So oftentimes people who work like for themselves as a business owner, maybe you are a painter, maybe you do nails, maybe you do lawns, maybe you work as a consultant, and you are hired as an entity, then your taxes aren't paid for you by your employers. And in most cases, you will need to pay into the system when you file your taxes. One thing I'll say is that taxes can be quite complicated, right? Tax law, I've heard people compare immigration law to tax law in terms of complexity. And so it's really important that you, just like with immigration, like we always say, that you hire an immigration attorney who is knowledgeable and experienced to help you on your immigration case, because isn't it one of the most important things in your life? It's true for taxes as well. You need to be hiring and working with entities that you trust. You can go to the IRS website and find nonprofit organizations like Foundation Communities. We trust them and refer them. They speak English and Spanish, and they help with tax prep. But it's really, really important that every single person understand their tax obligations and they file their returns timely, because the consequences of not doing it can be really, really big, depending on what's going on in your life.
Yeah, that's really good to know. And so a follow-up question to that is, do we all pay the same types of taxes, or does it vary by where we live? So for example, I live in San Marcos, it's Hays County, which is different than Travis County, but maybe somebody in Minnesota, do we pay the same taxes?
Yeah. So typically your taxes are going to vary depending on your state, not your city or your county. You shouldn't have, city specific tax returns that you need to file, for example, but definitely state returns are different. So like in the state of Texas, we have a really high sales tax. So on every purchase that we make, or almost every purchase we make, I think it's 8.25% tax that we pay every time you buy clothes, anything, you're paying that tax into the system just automatically. Whereas in other states, I think New Hampshire, for example, they don't have any sales tax, but they have an income tax. And so at the end of the year, they have to file a state income tax return. And some states have a hybrid. They have a sales tax and they have a state income tax. So it definitely is going to vary based upon the state where you live. In Texas, you only have to file a federal tax return. You don't have to also file a state tax return. But I will also say, I'm not a tax attorney. I'm an immigration attorney. So if Yun starts asking me any complex questions, I'm going to say, I don't know, talk to a tax attorney.
Yeah, or refer me to Foundation Communities.
Yes. I mean, I should say there are certain state taxes that apply to businesses, and definitely if you own a business and you're claiming business deductions and all of that, you should absolutely 100,000% be working with a CPA, someone who is licensed to help you do your books and file your taxes. Don't mess around with that.
Most definitely. So of course we are an immigration firm, and we talk with a lot of immigrants, documented and undocumented. And as an immigrant myself, there's something that I've always heard: immigrants don't pay taxes. That's a very common myth. So I have a question. Do all immigrants need to file taxes, or does it matter by documentation status? What goes into that?
Well, let's start with the policy conversation. So from a policy, pro-immigrant, anti-immigrant perspective, all of the legitimate studies that have been done on an economic basis show that immigrants are an economic benefit to the overall economy. Not only do they pay the taxes that we've already talked about, like sales tax and property taxes, they also pay into income tax if they're working with a social security number, or even if they're not, even if they're working for a company and they've used a false social security number, those taxes are still being taken out, withheld, and paid to the federal government. But also the benefit of immigration overall, immigrants are much more likely to start businesses, to create jobs, and there just is no question when you really dig into the data about whether immigration is a good thing or a bad thing for the overall economy of our nation. It is 100% a good thing. But in answer to the second part of that question, Yunwen, do immigrants need to file taxes? Our answer is yes. Everyone should file a tax return. And even undocumented people who aren't working with a social security number, who are maybe you are working and you're cleaning houses and you only get paid in cash. You still, not only do you still have a duty to contribute by filing and paying your taxes, but it's also really beneficial to you personally to do this in terms of your, future immigration cases. For example, like if you have a deportation case in court, the judge is going to want to see that you've been filing and paying your taxes. Or if you're filing a DACA application and you need to show your physical presence and your time spent in the U.S., tax returns are one of the main ways that you can do that. If you've been here for years and years and you've filed your tax returns for 10 years, you can get a transcript from the IRS that just shows that you regularly file and pay your taxes. And that can really, really help you beyond just being sort of like a moral obligation. It can really help the individual for their immigration case.
Most definitely. And so we mentioned this a little bit earlier when we started, but can we expand a little bit on the conversation of, if I don't have a social security number, how do I file my taxes?
Right. So like Yunwen mentioned, there's the individual taxpayer identification number, the ITIN, which undocumented people can use to file their tax returns. You can apply online, but you can also get help from an organization like Foundation Communities. And, you have to submit an application. You can do it online. You have to show certain documentation, and there is a requirement to keep it up. So every few years, you also have to renew it. But that is the way that an undocumented person who doesn't have a social security number files their taxes. They would use their ITIN number.
Okay. And so I'm a DACA recipient, right? And I got DACA when I was 15, almost 10 years ago. And so one of the biggest fears I had, being 15 years old, is that, I had my work permit through my DACA, but I didn't have a job. And I was very afraid that if I didn't have a job, I would have my DACA taken away. Is this something that's possible if you have DACA or you have a green card and you're not working for some reason or another? Is that a risk?
So I'm going to say no. I don't believe that it is a risk. Just because you have permission to work doesn't mean you are required to work, especially if you're like in high school studying. Okay. There was this little window of time during the Trump administration where the public charge rule looked at an applicant for green cards, work history and their financial history. And one of the elements of that inquiry was, does this person provide for themselves? Do they support themselves? And if they have a work permit and they're not studying and they're not working, that at that time, during that little window of time, would be a mark against that person's, public charge review. That policy was very short-lived. It was battled not in federal court. It was blocked by the courts. It ended up just not moving forward under the Biden administration. So I would say, no, there's no requirement to work, with a little asterisk that says, immigration policy. It is very, very ever changing and wavering. And so who knows what will happen in the future, who our next president is going to be, what immigration policies are they going to put in place. But I feel confident saying at this point, just because you have work permission as an immigrant does not mean you are required to use it.
Okay, yeah. And going off of that same question, are you required to file taxes as an adult, even if you're not working?
So this is where we're getting beyond my area of expertise. I know if, like, for example, if you're a dependent on your parents' tax returns, you don't have to file your own return. I think that's what I remember from my years of being a minor. And then there are limits, to like, and I'm pulling this out of my head here, but I think if you're employed and you earn under around $12,000 as an individual, you don't have to file a tax return. But if you're self-employed, and you get paid as a 1099 contractor, the limit is much lower. It's like $4,000. So obviously, if you earn nothing, you shouldn't have to file tax returns, but you should really pay attention to how much you earn, and don't take my word for it. We always say on these shows, this is general advice. This is not meant to be specific advice for any particular person on any particular case. If you have immigration questions specific to your case, please do call us for a free evaluation of your case that's totally confidential. And if you have tax questions, call a CPA or foundation communities. I personally do not recommend one of these like national chains like H&R Block. I think that the people who prepare taxes at chains like that, they're not CPAs. They don't have the level of expertise that I would feel comfortable with. And so just as a, sort of personal recommendation, I think you should go to either a CPA or a nonprofit that the IRS has listed as trustworthy on their site, and foundation communities is one of those.
Yeah, most definitely. And that's a huge concern especially for a lot of our immigrant clients. We're very scared to mess up anything. We already feel like we're on very thin ice. So adding another stressor, let's just go ahead and go to a source that we can for sure say that we trust.
Yes, I'm a big proponent of hiring the experts in all the areas of life. Stick to what you know.
Oh, absolutely. And so, during my time speaking, on the phone with a lot of our clients, we get a lot of people that, come into the United States with tourist visas or the ESTA visa. Do they have to file taxes in the United States if they come here frequently?
So no, because they should not be earning any money. If you're here on an ESTA or you're here on a tourist visa, it would be considered a violation of your visa to be working and earning money. So if you're following the rules of your visa, you're not earning money, and therefore you don't have to file a tax return.
Awesome. Good to know. So let's say that, I eventually become a green card holder or a naturalized United States citizen, but then I keep my citizenship from my country of birth. Do I need to pay double taxes?
Yes. Yeah, you have your tax obligations in your home country, which vary obviously by country, and you have tax obligations in the United States. And that is an area that can get even more complicated. And there are experts, subspecialists in immigration tax questions. One of the people that I refer to commonly is a guy named Robert Alcorn, and he's a CPA who's based in Dallas. You can Google him. And he actually comes to the immigration law, the immigration lawyer seminars to talk to us as lawyers about the basics that we need to know for our clients. And so he's the one I refer to when someone reaches out to me and they're like, I need to know about like my, Irish tax obligations as a dual citizen because I own a home there and I don't know, have a retirement account. And it's like, okay, you got to talk to an expert about it when it gets that complicated.
Most definitely. Something that we also see a lot is that, a lot of our community members, our immigrant community members, they're very hard workers and they use some of this money to send back to their home countries. This is something that I saw growing up as a child. And so if I send money back to Mexico, to my family members, to friend, is that something that I need to disclose to the IRS?
I don't think so. I don't know the rules around remittance disclosures, but I don't think so. It's like I said, it's not my area.
Yeah, for sure. Let's see. So let's say that somebody came into the United States in 2009, but immediately started working, but then they didn't start paying taxes until 2012. Are those taxes for those years that they missed? Is that something that they can still pay off in the future?
Yes, you can file back tax returns. Again, you would want to talk to someone who is a subspecialist in amending or filing old tax returns. I think you can go back 3 years. And at that point, that would be something like if you're considering filing taxes for an immigration benefit, that would be something that we would want to talk to someone about. For example, when we are defending someone in deportation proceedings before an immigration judge, this may be someone who has been in the U.S. for a long time, and maybe they got picked up, after an arrest, driving without a license, or maybe even they got arrested in a work raid. Maybe they were detained temporarily, got out on bond, and now they're in deportation proceedings. There's probably 500,000 people in that situation in the U.S. immigration court system. One of the main defenses that we often use for our clients is called cancellation of removal. And to qualify for cancellation, you have to show you've been in the U.S. for at least 10 years before your case was initiated, that you have had good moral character that whole time, and that you have a U.S. citizen or permanent resident, parent, spouse, or child who would suffer exceptional hardship if you were to be deported. So those are the three main things where, we got to prove the time, we got to prove the good moral character, and we got to prove hardship to the family, which may be based on an illness or, something along those lines. But that middle part, the part about good moral character, is why I'm bringing this up. There are a lot of judges, immigration judges, who will not approve a cancellation case unless they see that for those 10 years that you've been in the United States, you've either filed a return or you weren't required to file a return. And so if we, are representing an immigrant who's in cancellation proceedings and they skipped the last 3 years of returns, but they were earning money, we probably are going to recommend that they amend and file late returns so that we can show the court that our client has met their duty to file returns and therefore can meet the good moral character requirement. So in some cases, it will be useful on an immigration case to file old returns or amend, previously filed returns. Like sometimes this is one of the reasons that we want people to get good advice, is I've seen people get really terrible advice from tax preparers or even like notarios or people who don't know any better. And they'll recommend, I'm thinking of a client many, many years ago who listed children on her tax return who were not her children. They were actually her neighbor's children, and her neighbor was undocumented, but she had legal status. And so she and her neighbor decided to list the neighbor's kids as dependents, and then like split the proceeds or something. I mean, it was wild. It was crazy. But that kind of stuff goes down, and people don't know what they should do, who can be a dependent, who can't be a dependent. And if you take advice from someone and you actually, even unknowingly commit fraud on a tax return and you come to us, we're probably going to recommend that you amend that if your tax return is going to be reviewed in your immigration case. We don't want you to have a fraudulent return on record.
Most definitely. Wow. Taxes sounds scary to me sometimes, so I'm definitely going to an expert for this.
Exactly. I mean, it's not, it is scary because there's so many ways to do it wrong, but the solution is to hire someone who knows what they're doing, whom you can trust,
Absolutely. Just, like in immigration and bankruptcy, these are some of the services that we offer here. Please give us a call. Our phone number is 855-502-0555. Our lines are secure and they are confidential. We're here to assess your case. So please give us a call. And let's see, I have another question here. So let's say that I started off with an ITIN number, and then later, I got a work permit, I got a social security number. What happens to that ITIN?
It will eventually expire, so you just will stop using it. Whereas with a social security number, it's slightly different. Once you get a social, it's yours for life. And there are people back in the 90s, beneficiaries of immigration petitions, even if they were out of status, got social security numbers. So there's a lot of people who have been in the U.S. for a long, long time who have socials but no legal status. And that's their social forever, and if you get it, like when your DACA, the social security number that you got when you got DACA, eventually when you get your permanent residency and citizenship and all that down the road, your social will stay yours for life. And it doesn't expire. You don't have to do anything to keep up your social like you do with an ITIN.
Oh, wow. Okay. That's good to know. I had no idea that ITINs expired.
I don't know if that's the word that they use, but I know that there's a certain, like every year, a certain group of ITINs have to be renewed. And it's, I think it's based on the numbers, and you have to go through the whole rigmarole.
No, no, definitely. Yeah. So here at Lincoln-Goldfinch Law, we handle a lot of family petitions. And something that we see also is common law marriages here in Texas. So let's say that, a couple, they declare a common law marriage. One of them is undocumented. The other one is a United States citizen. Do they have to file their taxes separately due to their immigration status, or is this something that they can do jointly?
They can do it jointly. In fact, when you're married, there are rules about how you file your taxes. So you either have to file married filing separately, married filing jointly, or you can file head of household, but I think you have to be separated. So you don't want to file as a single person if you are married. And lots of people do this. If they're in a mixed status family, let's say the wife is a citizen, the husband's undocumented, he doesn't have an ITIN, and they got to file their tax returns, and she just submits a return. That's not an accurate return because she's not single, she's married. So these are things to be thinking about now. It's March 2nd. Work on getting your ITIN in time so that you can file as a couple, as a married couple, if you are married, because that is a requirement.
Most definitely. And one last question here. Is there any case, as far as you know, in which an adult can be exempt from having to pay taxes?
Yes, there's tons of cases where people don't have to file taxes. One of the ones is what we already talked about, is if your income's under a certain amount. And then there's certain types of income that are not taxed. Maybe social benefits, for example. But again, this is all, these are questions for an expert. It's worth whatever time investment it will be for you, because like Foundation Communities is free to go and ask the questions of the expert and to do your taxes the right way. And to have that peace of mind, because like Yunwen said, this stuff is scary. It's, filing a bankruptcy petition is scary. Filing an immigration petition is scary. Filing taxes can be scary. It's like you are going up against a federal agency that has lots of rules and lots of ways to break them unknowingly. And so get the help that you need so that you can sleep at night. I mean, that's what we always talk about. It's like our tagline at the firm is bringing peace to families. That's our goal for you guys, is that you can work with us on the areas where we have expertise, so that you can just rest assured that it's covered, that you are covered, and you don't need to worry.
Yeah, well said. Yeah, that's all I have for you right now. Is there anything else that you would like to tell our immigrant community, or just our listeners in general, that have a doubt of whether they should file their taxes or not?
Definitely talk to an expert. The bottom line is, if you don't know if you need to file or not, talk to an expert. And in terms of these weekly roundup shows, please feel free to reach out and say like, hey, I really want you guys to talk about, I don't know, DACA advanced parole. Like, we'd be happy to do shows related to what you guys are curious about. I did a little video this morning on the Real ID Act. We'll be talking more about that. That new deadline is coming up in 2 months. On May 3rd of this year, the Real ID Act is going to take effect. And so if you don't have a document that has a gold star like this, if your driver's license doesn't have a gold star, and this is in all 50 states, that's how you know you have a Real ID license or state ID, you won't be able to fly domestically. So that's really going to be really important for immigrants, like DACA recipients who want to travel around the 50 US states. In the way that you know that you don't have a Real ID is that gold star, and also if you got it before 2016. So please do be thinking about that, because it's going to be a nightmare. Like, I'm already thinking I'm just not going to travel in May, because can you imagine the lines at the airport when like all these people who don't know about this taking effect are going to show up with their old driver's licenses. So either get a new ID that has the gold star, or you can travel with any passport of any country that's valid and unexpired. So that's an alternate solution. Like for undocumented people who need to fly, make sure you've got an up-to-date passport. You're not going to be able to use, your matricula or anything like that after May 3rd.
Good to know. The benefit of having DACA is that I also have to renew my license every 2 years or so.
That's true. Yeah, good point. Yeah, that's true. But like some green card holders who have 10-year green cards probably have driver's licenses that need to be updated, and your green card is not going to get you on a plane after May 3rd. So something to think about.
Something to definitely think about.
Yeah.
All right. Well, that's all that we have today. Thank you for your time. Thank you for listening. And please send us your topics, send us your questions. Again, give us a call to 855-502-0555. All of our lines are secure and confidential, and we're here to help you. Thank you.
Thanks, guys. Bye.